I don't know if you've heard it in one of the episodes, but like I had this one time where because I was, just like you probably do. I know you do. At the beginning of your episodes, like, do I sound okay? Can you hear me? All that. I had a
Yeah.
band say that they could hear me, and I don't know when it happened, but my mic, like, the cable was fucked or something. Because when I listened to it back, I literally sounded like super sad. Like I sounded like a droid off of Star Wars or something. Like, it was so staticky and just so beepy. And
Oh,
we
that
recorded a
sucks.
full hour and a half to 2 hour episode, and I was like, I don't know why they didn't say anything that entire time. Like, how did they even understand what I was saying?
Well, it's possible that like it was working in Zoom, right? And like, or no, because you don't record external audio. You just use the Zoom recording, right?
Oh, well, so at that time, I was kind of doing how you were doing with like
Yeah.
I would record all in GarageBand, route the audio back into there, but I would record my audio directly to GarageBand.
Oh, gotcha.
And it would be the same, technically the same mic going into to Zoom. So yeah, it might have been a
It's
freak thing where
possible
like,
that like Zoom tried to hog the audio or something.
yeah. But that was one of the most daunting things, hearing that and telling them, hey, actually your episode's going to be out a week later, because I went through and re-recorded all of my audio.
Oh God, that sounds terrible. I had one time I was recording with a friend and like the first half was great and then the second half was like corrupted for whatever reason. It was like the save location on like the computer wasn't right or something like that and so it didn't do what it was supposed to do. That was when I learned that you can uncorrupt some audio files using Audacity
Mm.
and it's the craziest shit in the world. It's magic. Like it was literally like you tried to listen to the file and it just sounded like the entire time, and somehow I made it usable audio again.
Oh,
It was
weird.
wild.
Well, my only question for you before we get started, I know we've already been partaking in a few brews throughout this, but do you have an unopened beverage that you'd like to
I do.
do with the opening crack?
I
Hell
made
yeah.
sure it was unopened because I was waiting for this.
Part of me was like, oh, maybe I should message him and tell him about it. And I'm like, nah, he knows. He
He
knows to do
knows.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, all right, so we'll crack these. While I'll count us down, we'll crack these. I'll do a little intro, bring you in, and we'll just have a good time.
All right.
Well, more of a good time than we've continued the good time that we've been having.
Continue the good times. Yeah, yeah. It's a double header.
Yeah. All right. In three, two, one. Welcome to the Beers with Bands podcast with your host, Michael Torres. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to a new episode of Beers with Bands, or part two, depending on when you're finding this episode. This is a
Part
very
two,
special.
baby.
This is a very special episode. I'm very stoked on it. Tonight, I'm sitting down with Ryan from the Fresh Finds podcast. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. This has been a good time. We're rolling right in from an episode of my show coming into yours. We've already crushed a few brews. We're gonna continue to do it and just have a good time.
Yeah, quick props to everyone that's listened to the Fresh Finds episode first and then came over to this. You're in for probably, hopefully, more of a treat to round off your evening, depending on if you're listening to this in one full day. Which, if you're listening to Ryan and me for like 4 hours, that's major props to you. I appreciate that.
Maybe
Uh,
five by the time this is done, because we went
that
for
is
like 2.5 hours on the first episode.
that is true. That is true. But I'm stoked you're here. I'm stoked we're doing this. Like I kind of mentioned in your episode when I had Will from Full Blown Meltdown on. We kind of he said that this should be an episode that happens, and I'm stoked that you're part of this whole crossover little series that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it's super cool that you're doing like a whole series with it because I saw you post on Twitter. You're like, so is anybody want to like be on it? Like podcasts want to do like a crossover thing, and I was like, yeah, cool, that'll be awesome. And then I saw some other people. I'm like, is he just gonna choose one? Like what's gonna be the thing? I think that it's super cool that you're just doing like whole month of it, basically, right?
Basically, yeah. Depending on when it actually comes out, it'll be a few weeks of it, but Yeah, I'm really stoked because like so I've done one crossover before, and it was with my friends in Your Band Is Garbage, another DIY podcast that
Oh yeah,
they
I've
haven't
heard of
been
them.
putting yeah, they haven't been putting out episodes in the last few years, but they I know have been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. They have a new band called Pickle Bucket that's going on, and I
Okay.
think they're supposed to be recording new episodes here pretty soon. But that one was just a wild time. Like they have like a whole soundboard and everything, so like we recorded through Discord, and like they would just randomly hit like a button, and it would be like,
Do, do, do,
well, it would be a little bit of
do.
that, and then it'd be like Limp Bizkit's rolling, so you just hear rolling, 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 and it was the funniest fucking
Just
thing.
absolute chaos.
Yeah, in the best way.
I've always kind
And
of joked that like the episodes that are the biggest shit show are always like actually the best episodes
yeah,
because they just go off the rails and people love the entertainment value.
um, but yeah, so that was the last crossover I've done, and I've been wanting to do another crossover for a while, and getting so close to episode 200, I was like, what if I just have a like try and see who wants to do crossover episodes, and just fucking do a few more to lead up to it. And I'm stoked that you were one of the first people to reach out, and technically the first one I'm recording with.
Yeah.
Might move around schedule like release dates, but I'm stoked that you're technically the first one.
Well, one of the things that I love about recording other people's podcast episodes is I just get to talk and then I'm done. I don't have to edit the shit afterwards. It's great.
Right. uh yeah, and then like kind of how we were saying at the towards the end of your episode, where it's always hey, can you be on my podcast? It's never, hey, do you want to interview me for your podcast? Or
Yeah.
I always have the anagram in my head. I can't think of it right now, but like it's nice to be on the other side of things.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's human nature at a certain point to like hear these interview questions or read these interview questions and be like, what would I say? Like I've thought about this a lot. Like, ever since I was a kid, even reading like interviews in like Guitar World magazine and stuff like that. And it's like, how would I answer this question? Like, if I ever somehow got famous and got to the point of like being interviewed, like, how would that go for me? It's just like I feel like people think about that all the time.
Yeah. Uh, well, to kind of jump into things, like I've said, you're Ryan from the Fresh Finds podcast.
Yes.
For people that are fans of Beers with Bands, definitely go check out Fresh Finds as well, because you're doing. It was nice also to be a part of your episode because it gives like a little insight as to like a little bit different as to like what everyone's doing. And for people that haven't checked out Fresh Finds, it's basically a podcast focused on discovering new music with good people, and I really love the setup you're doing. But kind of take
Thank
me
you.
back into that beginning point. I know we kind of talked about you started out kind of late 2020. Like, what was the idea, and like how did Fresh Finds come to fruition?
So initially, it was really funny because I graduated in 2020 from college. I got a degree in audio production. So like doing the audio stuff is my whole thing. Um, but of course, 2020 there was the pandemic going on, and so there I couldn't do anything with like recording studios were mostly closed. Live events were just not happening. And so I'm sitting here with student loan debt, up the ass basically. And I'm just sitting there like I was bartending it in Applebee's at the time. And I was like just like looking for jobs. And 2020 was a huge boom time for podcasts. And so I was applying for a bunch of jobs on like LinkedIn and other like job boards and like that sort of stuff. And I saw a ton of postings for podcast producer positions, but they all like wanted prior experience. And it was a thing where I was like, I know I could do it. I have the skills. Podcasting isn't that hard. um, Hosting, I think, is harder than actually like the producing aspect of it, at least in my opinion, because like you
Oh
have to
yeah,
be good
and
with
it's
people and like social engineering and shit.
100%. And as someone that like thinks of it the other way, because like prior to podcasting, I have never edited a video. I've never recorded audio or done anything with audio. So like me coming into it, I was like, yeah, I can fucking ask questions, no problem. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh fuck, I gotta record all this shit too. Like I got like me feeling old as shit, like going to YouTube University to figure out how to do everything.
Teaching an old
Um,
dog new tricks.
basically, that I mean, like leading up to your episode, I was like feeling so dumb. I was like, hey man, like how do I have to set this up for your episode? Like how do I get ready? And that's just me like not being familiar with any of that. Like, but to have it be the opposite way, yeah, it's got to be completely different.
Yeah, it was weird. All the video stuff was like self-taught type of stuff. I never edited any video or did anything like that before doing this. But and you've kind of talked about this before too, which is like for whatever reason, people like video podcasts more than they like audio podcasts. And so like at some point, if you're doing a podcast, you have to incorporate video at some point if you
Yep.
really want to like reach that next level. But anyway, so like going back to that, I was like, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna make my own podcast with blackjack and hookers. I'm gonna make my own podcast, and I'll just like it'll be about new music, and I'll talk to my friends from college who also are audio people that I think have like a cool taste in music. We'll talk about some tunes, and that'll be it. And I was really kind of basing it off of like the radio show format of
Mm.
like you've got two people talking, riffing back and forth, you listen to a song, two people talking, and that sort of thing. And I always really liked the like especially now the like listening to music aspect because it kind of acts as an icebreaker to help like if you're talking to somebody that you've never actually like talked to before, it can be kind of like weird to like get people to open up. Like there's the social engineering aspect that I kind of like talked about. And like the listening to music is a good way to like relieve the tension.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, we talked about it in your episode. Is it's so hard to try and get some people over that hurdle, where you use music to kind of do that and kind of vibe and kind of get loose. Obviously, not to say we're a big drinking podcast on beers with bands, but I basically am using alcohol as the same like stimulant to do that. Um,
Alcohol is social lubricant.
yeah, 100%. Like I will go to shows and I mean I outside of podcasting I'm very introverted. If I go to a show I'm usually sitting in the corner if I don't know anyone to talk to. Give me like an hour, a couple bands in, I'll at least be a few beers in, and then I'll talk to fucking just anybody.
Oh yeah, it's a couple beers, maybe like hit the one hitter one time, and you're like, all right, now
Yeah,
I can talk to people.
yeah, you're in the zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but I really like what you're doing on yours, where you kind of incorporate. You're not just talking about the band that's on there and like giving them the platform, but you're also having them because not only are you bringing five songs to the table that you want to kind of showcase, your guest is also bringing five songs and five bands that they kind of want to showcase too. So it's like propping up the community even more than just like one band where you do it that way. Like you're
Yeah,
giving that whole horoscope, well, like not horoscope, but you're broadening the range of who you're talking to.
yeah, broadening the horizons of it.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
that was kind of like a big part of like what I wanted to do, especially initially, because initially I wasn't interviewing bands. I was just talking to my friends who most of them didn't make music or were in like very small like local bands that weren't like releasing stuff. And so it was really just about like this is going to be a platform to try and like uplift music that I think is cool.
Now, has like the five song format always been a thing from the beginning, or did that kind of change along the way?
No, it was always five songs. It was something where I thought that five songs each would get us to like a reasonable podcast length. And I was initially gonna play with it because I recorded like a couple test episodes and I was gonna play with it to be like, oh, how's the timing work out? Is this like a good length? Is it too long? Is it too short? And I kind of just nailed it first try. Not to toot my own horn too much, but I'm like, I feel like this is kind of perfect. It's like you get a good batch of new songs, not too much. It doesn't leave you wanting a ton more.
Hmm. Have you gone back and listened to those test episodes at any point recently?
I did. Probably. of I can't think of how long ago it was, but I was just thinking about like, okay, so what did the podcast used to sound like? And I listened to the first episode that I did with Ghost Town Remedy, who are a Nashville pop punk emo band, and they were the first band that I ever had on.
Mm.
Um, but I was listening to that episode, and I was like, so the elements are there, but like I was not nearly as good of an interviewer. Those guys were really good at holding up their end of the conversation. It didn't need a whole lot of social engineering, but like there were some that were real rough to get through. And like the audio quality was not great either, because like every season I kind of like update the because I mix all of my audio, because I'm an audio guy. That's it's in my nature. I mix all of it, and so like I think about plugins and what I use, and like it just didn't sound nearly as polished as it does now.
Mm. Uh, yeah, so on my end, usually once it's up, I don't, I haven't gone back and listened to anything. There's one time where since I still have it all saved on a hard drive, like the original early testings back when Brian and me were sitting in his kitchen. I had my laptop, the mics, we were like testing everything out. I
Yeah,
still have all those episodes unreleased. Because our first episode was going to be like an introduction to Beers with Bands. We were kind of going to be like, why, like, give reasonings as to why you should listen to us, and like kind of talk about our like top five like bands or albums. And I still have that, and I listened to it at one point, like maybe 6 months in, and I was like, this is cringy as shit. Because even though we like had all wrote down like the albums we were wanting to talk about, it's like felt so scripted listening back to it. That
well, and
awkwardness.
yeah, because I mean, when it's like in a conversation like this, where it's like you're either getting interviewed or just talking, then it doesn't, it's not as big of a thing. But like, I absolutely hate talking about myself. So like, if I were to just try and do like, this is me, whatever, or like, even like writing cover letters for like applying to jobs and stuff like that, I always hated that, because I'm like, I just felt narcissistic as hell, and I'm like, I that's not me.
Right. Uh, so yeah, the pod Fresh Finds, starts out in late 2020, kind of goes through, and I know we kind of touched base on this. It starts out, you went full into it. You were doing weekly
Full
episodes
bore.
right away. Were you doing audio and video right away too?
No, I was just doing audio uh for the first season, which was about 6 months. Then I went on hiatus because I was like just working so much at work that I just didn't have the time for it. I was burned out like crazy because I was trying to put together one of these episodes a month, or one of these episodes a week rather. And I was very much building the tracks as the train is moving. Like, I wasn't pre-recording episodes. I had one day guaranteed off a week. Uh like no, well, yeah, so I had one day guaranteed off a week that it would always be that day. I usually got another day off, but it would depend on when it was.
Right.
And so like I used that day, I was like, all right, so the night before, I'm gonna record with whoever I record with, spend the entire next day editing it, making like promo images, doing all that stuff, and then put it out the next morning. And so most of them, I was turning them around in like 24 hours,
Oh
which is
god.
another part of the reason why like the quality was like kind of so, because I was, just doing it on such a tight time frame.
Yeah, I that is crazy to think of, because like when I get done recording, like even today, we'll get done recording. I will turn everything up. Well, I'll turn off Zoom, and I usually just let my computer sit here, and I'll go into the other room, and I won't touch my computer for at least 2 days, just to kind of like let it go away from me. Of just like, I don't want to do any podcast stuff. Like, this is job's over. I'm gonna take a day to figure this out, and then come back and like hit a full bore. I can't imagine like spending the 2 to 3 hours recording, and then immediately going into it and being like, okay, job's not done.
Yeah.
Got to keep working on it.
Well, and I'm still really terrible about that. I'm getting better, but like the 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 scheduling, like the like kind of office work aspect of it, if you will, is like where I'm really bad. I love interviewing people. I love being the host of the show. I really like the editing process as well because that's just kind of like it. I don't know. I get kind of zen into it. It's a thing that I enjoy doing, but it's
Mhm.
like the I'm gonna talk to somebody and schedule a time, and I have to reach out and I have to do emails, and like that's the type of stuff that I'm terrible about. And so only recently did I start really scheduling episodes out in advance. It was like this year I was like, okay, so I'm gonna talk to a bunch of people before the year starts and start filling up slots for every single month before the year starts so that I've got stuff scheduled. But it's still like I'll get done with an episode, upload it, and then text or message the next band and be like, "Hey, so when are you free to record?"
I mean,
Like,
that's at least better because like for people that aren't aware of Fresh Finds, like you do one episode a month,
yep,
and put it out. Which doing it that way, where you took the time to at least be like, hey, I have these 12 days throughout the year that episodes are going to come out. Do you want to be a part of this? And like working on that, where I will, I know you like commended me for like doing all this work and like recording all these episodes, but like what'll happen is I'll record for a time frame, get everything settled out, have them like scheduled, and then like I'll be like, okay, I can kind of take this month off, and then like gets to the next month, and I'm like, oh shit, like
oh shit, yeah,
I have to reach out to a bunch of people to see if they'll want to be on it. Like the amount of times I get closer to a month, and I'm like, I don't, I don't know who's gonna be out in the next month, like what I'm gonna do, and like who's gonna be there, and who's like. And then I get freaked out, and I'm like, no one's gonna want to pay attention to Beers bands. I'm gonna miss a week. I'm gonna throw off the whole flow. It's all gone. And then somehow a miracle happens, and I send out one email, or like I send out a bunch of emails, and I'm like, no one's gonna respond, and then everyone responds, and then I get stressed out about that. But that's a whole
yeah.
different story. But to have the initial game plan of like going into the year of like this is the layout, these are the episodes that are going to happen, so you already really have. I know we're recording in late May, but you already have the rest of the year pretty much finalized for who's going to be on.
Yeah, for the most part. I've got a couple people that I've talked to and they're like, "Oh, we'd love to be on the show." And I'm like, "So, I'm going to have you as a backup in case for whatever reason one of these planned ones falls through because they just can't, can't swing it that month or whatever. I'm going to have you as a backup." But like, yeah, it started out I think I was like, "All right, so I'm going to plan out through June, so like the next 6 months." And then people kept contacting me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm free the week after that. Yeah, I'm free the month after that. I'm free." Then the next thing I knew, all of 2024 was booked out by like the end of March, and I'm like, and it's kind of put me in a weird position a couple times because it's like there'll be a band that I really, really want to have on, and they reach out to me because they want to be on the show, and I have to be like, I don't have the time to do it right now. I'm sorry. And it's like I'm heartbroken because it's like I want to do this, but I just can't. My books will be open at the end of the.
Try again next year.
Yeah,
uh,
I feel like I'm like big timing people that I really want to have on the show, but it's just like I just don't have the time because I work full time and then do this on the side.
right. No, and in like in the same aspect, like I have that same thing that happens where I'll have people reach out to me, and I'm like, dude, like I'd love to have you on, but it'll be like 2 to 3 months until it happens. Like I'm so booked right now. Um, obviously I'm releasing weekly compared to monthly, but it's still where was I going out with that? Because it wasn't. I don't want to leave that hanging like I'm an asshole. But it is difficult, especially when some bands hit you up and you aren't prepared for like what they're going to be releasing. Like because the worst has got to be, you know, especially you being in this for the amount of almost 4 years now,
Yep.
as to you know who you're connected to, who might be releasing stuff. But when those bands hit you up like kind of last minute, it's like you should have, if not to be a dick, but kind of hit me up like a little bit earlier to kind of get into this, or like I would love to have you, but like I can't do it now because timing just isn't right.
Yeah, and so well, the nice thing is because I do feature music on the podcast, I'm usually like, well, I can't have you on for an interview, but I can feature a song. If it's coming out at the end of the month, sometimes I'm like, do you want to premiere a song on the
Ooh.
episode? It'll be Fresh Finds exclusive for like a week and a half before the project drops or something like that. And so that's kind of my way of like trying to still work with people and be able to do that sort of thing without being able to actually have them on an episode.
Now, do you think, since there is all this like momentum and like people wanting to be on, do you think at some point you'll kind of start to put out maybe more than one episode a month at some point?
So that's something that I've thought about, and kind of with this being, I was saying that it was going to be like a special episode where it's going to be like in between two regular episodes. I was like, maybe I could start doing like every 2 months we'll have a second episode. So it'll be
Ooh.
1 month that has one episode, and then 1 month that has two episodes. So I've thought about that, and I think that that might be doable because it would give me enough time in between other episodes to just work on like the edit and like that sort of thing. So I have definitely thought about that before. Um, it's getting to the point I don't make any money doing this. And I'm like, I would love to just be able to hire a second editing person and just be able to, all right, so I recorded this episode. I'm going to edit this episode. And then I just recorded this episode, hand that off to an editor and just be able to, do 2 episodes a month every month. But
Yeah,
I don't have the budget for that. And I would feel really bad having somebody just do all this editing for me for free.
yeah. I've had a couple people reach out and be like, "Hey, like I love what's going on," like that have been on the show, not just like those spam emails that are like, "We can get you lots of followers."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that have offered to help out and be part of the crew, and I'm like, dude, like as much as you say you would do it for little to no money,
I
I
feel
don't
bad
feel
about that.
yeah, I
Yeah,
can't justify you doing it. Like I would want to compensate you, and I can't afford to compensate you. Um, and it's just one of the tough things, but it makes so much more sense on, especially on your end, because like if you check out the Fresh Finds interviews on YouTube, like you're putting in, not to declassify mine, like where I say like I'm DIY, like you put in all this stuff. Like you got little, I'm gonna like see my name come across with like my fucking handle and shit. Uh, and you have all this stuff incorporated, and it's so cool. And it makes sense as to why you're only doing one of those
I'm
while
such
still
a
recording.
try hard.
It looks so cool
I,
though. Like I gotta give you props, man.
I do the most when it comes to that stuff. Like it's like I will be editing out like even if there's just like a slight little like awkward pause. I'm like, all right, this is gonna sound better if I just cut that out. And so like my editing process, I do two passes basically. I do
Mm,
one rough edit where I cut out like uhs, that sort of thing. Sometimes I don't cut out all of them because I mean when you're talking, that's just how natural talking sounds.
right.
But like we're so used to hearing scripted dialogue in all of our media, and so when you edit it to sound a little bit punchier, a little bit snappier, I feel like there's something that kind of comes across. It feels more professional, it feels less DIY. Maybe not that DIY is a bad thing obviously, but it like I don't know. I just have this production mindset. I'm broken. And so
No,
it's just kind of a thing.
yeah, no, it's totally fine because it's cool that you have that production mindset because it also shows kind of like what you as Ryan are kind of about. Where like me, yeah, my audio, if you listen to one of these, might sound bad one day, but that's also because I didn't wear earplugs for a lot of shows, so my hearing's kind of fucked anyways.
Yeah.
And this podcast is gonna sound how it sounds. Um, but like also like me, like kind of going back to everything, I figured out how to do iMovie, and I was like, cool, figured this out, mastered it to a point. I'm solid. And then I started doing like in-person ones, and I have like two cameras. And I'm like, downloaded DaVinci,
Ah, yeah.
watch one two YouTube video to figure out what I need to do, and I'm like, cool. That's the extent as to where I'm gonna go until I feel like I'm obsolete and I need to redo it. Kind of how we talked about where like this was an all audio podcast up until like 2022, and I was like, everyone watches YouTube, and I even watch like podcasts on YouTube. Like I need to get into that market until I feel like I'm missing a market again, and like we decide to go like fucking 5D or some shit, and I got to figure that out. Like I'm good with where I'm at, but it's cool to see you doing all this stuff in there and like what a podcast in the DIY scene can be and look like for
Well, and
someone
I've
that
just
actually like puts in the time.
I've always been a technical person too. I like that technical polish. I mean, I was thinking about this because I've really stumbled into everything that I'm doing. Like all of my stuff has my face on it. I'm the guy. But it's really funny because that was never my intention. I was always kind of like the dude who just liked to be like the technical background guy. I was involved in theater in high school and stuff like that, but I never acted. I was never on the stage. I was always the guy behind the soundboard or like working the lights or anything like that. I mean, go back as far as like home movies from when I was 3 years old. Like there was the video of like the first time my parents brought out this like camcorder, and all that I wanted to do was be on the other side of it and see how it worked.
uh, but I mean, it's been a solid 4 years for you, and I know you asked this question to me on part one, so I feel like I have to return the favor on this.
Sure.
But like, what's been the episode that you were most shocked that like someone wanted to come on and do it, and you were most stoked for?
There's been a few. I think the first one was that Ghost Town Remedy episode that I talked about because it was the first time that I ever had a guest on that I didn't already know that was like a
Mm.
band. I had featured their song on an episode like a month prior, and they saw that and reached out to me and were like, "Hey, we think that this thing that you're doing is cool. Can we come on?" And that was like the beginning of me having bands on and like actually interviewing people as opposed to like just talking to my college friends about music.
That is kind of nice that you were at least doing the songs ahead of time. So like, if a song got featured by a band, they're already like somewhat familiar. Whereas like my aspect, I had to go from having just all my local friends on to being like, oh shit, pandemic, and reaching out to everyone, and then having that daunting task of sending emails to everyone and being like, hey, I'm run this thing that you never fucking heard of,
Yeah.
and I might be an alcoholic, but like, do you want to come on and talk about your band, and then just see how that goes? Did you
Yeah.
ever also have like was there a how did you get over like that daunting hurdle of like sending emails after you start having those people come in?
It wasn't an immediate thing because it was like I had Ghost Town Remedy on, and then I just kind of went back to talking to my friends, and I was like, that was a cool monumental like thing that happened, but I wasn't like, oh, this is going to be a regular thing. And it was really like I featured some bands. I think the next one was a band called Alpine Loop from Salt Lake City, and they also went, oh hey, we've got this new project coming out, we saw that you featured one of our songs on an episode, would you be interested in doing that? And so I kind of went from people like reaching out to me and being like, oh, what you're doing is kind of cool, and that gave me the confidence to be like, people think what I'm doing is cool. And so I just kind of like got around to it. There wasn't like a moment where I was just like, I'm gonna start asking people now. It was just kind of like, that it just kind of like very naturally evolved like that.
Yeah, it was more like, oh, this is something, because originally it was just you talking about the bands, but it turned into, oh, this could be something else where I could talk to these bands and
Yeah.
expand this horizon.
It was really season 2 after I like burned out, took a 6-month hiatus, and then realized that it felt like there was something missing from my life, which was doing the podcast. that I was really like. Season 2 was when I really started reaching out to people and was like, all right, so this band. I had Ghost Town Remedy on again because they're just like the absolute homies. They're day ones at this point. Um, so I reached out to them. I reached out to a couple of my friends' bands that were like starting to release music, but they were still people that I knew, and that got me to that point. And then after that, I started like really, reaching out to bands more.
Uh, and I know we talked about you're mentioning this like 6 month hiatus. What was like that driving force that made you want to like kind of pick it back up? Because I know leading up to when I first started doing like weekly episodes, I took like a month and a half off, and I was like, okay, I gotta kind of reevaluate things. I know want to kind of keep going with this, but like, do I also want to keep putting a lot of time into this? Like, what was the thing that really was like, I want to get back to where I was with this podcast and start putting out episodes again?
Like I kind of said, like I just felt like something was missing. Like there's that kind of I was still living at my parents' house at that point. It was still kind of like pandemic time. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm missing some sort of like connection with a community there. And this was kind of like, excuse me, this is kind of like my foot in the door of like being a part of that community. And I don't know, it's weird. I don't think that I would ever be involved in this type of community in a purely fan aspect. Not that I'm against that or anything. It's just like me as a person, I'm afraid of like being awkward and like that kind of thing. And so like if I was just some dude who had nothing to offer that was like, "Oh my god, you're my favorite band," trying to talk to people and stuff, like I would feel weird about it. And so like now I'm kind of like I have a role, I have something that I can offer, and then I become friends with people. Like I don't know, it's weird. It's very like businessy. It's a very weird like social anxiety thing. I don't know that there's anything really to it aside from that, but
Yeah, it does feel I think I get what you're talking about. Where like it'd be one thing to just be like a listener of a band and just like go up to them and be like gush all out about it, but to have that platform where you can kind of like I can't think of the right words, but you can kind of play off of each other at the same time where you're like, hey, come on my platform, we'll talk about you, and I you can hide that I'm a super fan while we're talking, but then at the same time, like I
yeah.
also get kind of pushed out to your audience, and it's like maybe you get pushed on my audience if they don't know you as well. Like it's rather than just being like a fan and going off and be like, I loved the last album, it was amazing. You can kind of
Yeah.
build off each other instead, like and kind
I
of
can
grow.
fanboy in a professional way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah. And there's been a couple episodes like that where I've just been, I'm such a big fan of this album. It's crazy that I'm getting to talk to you right now. Like most of the bands that I have had on haven't gotten fucking giant after I had them on, kind of like how some of the ones that you have, but like it was like Full Blown Meltdown was kind of like that for me, where it was like we had been talking online for like forever, and like the singles came out and then the album came out, and then we talked, and I was like, that kind of like cemented what felt like more of a friendship as opposed to
Mm,
just being a fan.
yeah, and like it's. I think I've mentioned this on a couple episodes where it's just that really tough too, because like I mean we sit down with people for an hour to sometimes 3 to 4 hours, and we build us as like podcast hosts. We build this bond with them, which happens in that moment, and then the thing that gets tough is like you at least on my end is like you want to keep interacting with them, but then it feels like sometimes that bond isn't fully there, if that makes sense, like where
It
it
can be hard to feel like if it's like reciprocated. It's like I
yeah,
feel like we're friends because I've talked to you for like 4 hours and I know some more like personal information about you, especially like because usually my episodes after we're done, we'll just like continue to shoot the shit and talk about just like life.
right.
Stuff that's not really good podcast material, but just be like, yeah, what are you up to? Just kind of shoot the shit. and that those are the episodes when I really start to feel like, oh yeah, I know this person, like we're friends, but like sometimes it doesn't feel like it's reciprocated all the time. And it can be like a weird position where it's like, I think we're friends, but do they think we're friends? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then you try and like message them a couple days afterwards, and it's just like this is awkward, like second date, like after
Yeah.
text. But I feel like that's just more like the podcaster like hurdle to kind of get over because like I don't know, it's just I also love, and I mentioned this multiple times, like you know this. I love everyone that comes on. I appreciate everyone that comes on. All their music is always sick, and like just anyone that takes the time to give a shit about beers with bands and wants to be
Yeah.
on and do one of these. Like same with probably like Fresh Finds. Like so immediately I already have like I'm already like level 40, and then by the time we get done with our conversation, I'm like, dude, I'm hooked. Like we're homies now, and then it just
Yeah.
to build that connection, it just kind of feels weird sometimes.
I had something I was gonna add to that, but it totally escaped my mind.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, I'm also almost about to start beer five.
I was
So
gonna
if I
say
start to
I'm at the end of number 4 right now.
yeah,
So
so if I start to ramble, that's where we're at. But
see, we're walking that line where it's like you're getting tipsy, you're getting loose, but you don't want to get to the point where you're like, all right, nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about anymore.
we'll see the sad thing is I get to that point mentally a lot sooner than I really do. So like I'll start rambling or like feel like I'm rambling, and then I just assume people don't know what I'm talking about. So I feel
I
like I
have
get a bunch
noticed
of blank
that you've
stares.
said that a couple of times on like episodes. You're like, I'm just rambling. I'm like, that sounds perfectly coherent. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the funny part is like I listen back to these sober, and I'm like, oh no, like I was perfectly fine. Like it made sense, and even I'll even have the bands be like, no, you make complete sense right now. I'm like, your face doesn't make me feel like I'm making sense right now. Like, um,
Some people there's like the I don't know. Some people don't really know how to reciprocate that and like be an active listener,
yeah,
because that's like another part of the podcasting thing is like kind of being an active listener. You have to listen, but you also have to like show that you give a shit.
right.
If that makes sense. I
It's a lot of
remembered what I
nodding
was
and
gonna
smiling.
say. I
Okay, yeah,
remembered what I was gonna say, but it's like that kind of just plays back into like the social anxiety aspect a little bit too. Like, if you're like kind of an introverted, socially anxious type of person, like it sounds like we both kind of are to an extent. It can be like, I don't know if they feel the same way about this relationship as I do, whether it's more professional or more like friendly.
right, yeah. Um, to kind of bounce, I know one thing that's not so fully introverted that Fresh Finds has gotten to do is you've gotten to go to a fest and kind of record and be kind of like a part of the entire fest with bands talking to you. You were part of Jorts Fest last year,
Yes,
and you're part of Jorts Fest again this year. You're going down
next
for it.
week.
Uh, hell yeah! Um, but like, how did that come about? Where you decided to go down? Like, did you decide to go down and just kind of do it, or did you kind of already know the people running it to kind of be like, hey, I kind of want to come do this? Like, how did that all come about?
Ghost Town Remedy, dude. Those fucking guys. They self-released their album on this label that they made up called Never Nude Records. Great name.
It is great.
And the logo is like a vinyl record wearing jorts. Um and after that they put out a couple of compilation albums. They did one that was like all like summer songs basically. So they did like Kokomo and like a bunch of just like summery pop punk type of shit. And then they did another one that was like a Christmas one. Um, and they were looking for something else to do with the label because like putting out compilations is weird and extremely expensive, especially if they're covers, because you have to get the rights to do the cover, and then you also have to pay yearly for those rights. And I forget exactly how much it is, but it's like you're paying yearly to keep this thing on streaming. It's and also just like putting out a compilation album. You've never released any music, so I don't know if how much you know about this, but like you have to go through a distribution company to
Mhm.
get your stuff on all of the streaming services. Most popular ones are like CD Baby and DistroKid, and a lot of them won't let you do compilation albums. They won't let you tag something as like various artists, which is like what you see on all the compilations. And so
Right.
like you have to go to like another one and they charge you way more because they're specifically for doing this thing. So it's just like it's a very bad use of money that I have kind of fallen into a little bit. We'll talk about that in a little bit more because I'm sure you've seen my tweets about that shit. But they were looking for something else to do with the label, and they were like, let's do a festival. Um, so last year was the first year of it. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna go down. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then I was like, I want to do this. And they were like, it'd be really cool if you did something with Fresh Finds for this. And I was like thinking, like, am I gonna do like a podcast? What am I gonna do? And I was like, I'm just gonna like interview all the bands, get some B-roll, and kind of put it together as like a little documentary type thing, basically.
Yeah, it was cool to see you do that because that's something that I've wanted to do too. Um, to go to a fest of some sort, and just like kind of interview everyone, like with the format that you decided to do it in. Did you, not to like kind of dive into the whole thing, but like did you decide, how did you decide to, like, rather than doing a full 3 hour podcast with like no, one person, like one band that you would normally do, how did you decide to break it up? Like, you kind of, because I know you, like, I checked out most of it where it's like you do a little bit of a band, kind of go into everything else. Like, how hard was it for you to determine like the time frames to do everything? This is more of like a me to question for you, not really podcast related, but like, how did you decide to do like that time framing?
Well, that was the weird thing about it was I initially my thought was that I was gonna kind of make like a travel vlog type video. And I was gonna do like, oh, I'm in the car getting ready to leave Detroit. It's 7 a.m. And then I was gonna be like, all right, it's currently 10 a.m. and I just stopped at McDonald's and grabbed some breakfast and all that stuff. And this going back to the kind of like hating to talk about myself thing, I feel like such an asshole when I'm just like talking to a camera out in public. And so I quickly was like, I don't want to do this. I need to figure out something else. I already knew I didn't really want it to be a podcast because I wanted it to like feature as much of the festival as I could. I wanted the festival to be the thing that was on display and not just like a band that was playing it.
Right.
So I had already thought of the idea of interviewing the bands. So what I kind of did was I was like, all right, I'm gonna have like 5 questions. I'm gonna ask everybody the same 5 questions. Then I'm gonna like get some B-roll and do that sort of thing. The actually getting people to do the interviews was really weird at first because I was like, most of these people don't know who the fuck I am. I'm gonna like walk up to him and be like, "Hey, can I? Your band is playing the festival. Can I interview you for this thing?" I felt so awkward about it, but everybody was like super cool about it. But it was really weird because it wasn't like a thing that was like baked into the schedule. Like, all right, you're gonna play your set and then you're gonna talk to Ryan, do the interview, that sort of thing. I just like was hanging out on the smoking patio outside the venue and was like, "You're in a band. I haven't talked to you yet." So
Nothing scarier than a guy coming up to you saying, "Hey, you're in a band. I haven't talked to you yet. Come over, come
yeah,
talk on my podcast."
exactly. It was so weird. It was like I knew a couple of the bands that were playing, and so like those weren't as weird. And then TJ specifically mentioned like between a couple sets, like, oh, Ryan from the Fresh Finds podcast is here. He's interviewing bands if you haven't talked to him yet. And so like that was more of like a formal introduction to the whole thing that made things go a lot smoother. But it was
Yeah.
like the first little bit, I was just like, I feel so awkward right now.
is there anything that you've taken from like that first year of going down to Jorts Fest that you're like working into going into the second year? Like anything that you're gonna rework or do differently to try and get them to kind of come over?
I want to be more organized with it is the first thing, because it was like I said, it was just so disorganized. I was just kind of like setting up a tripod and all right, that's basically the filming and we'll go into it. This time I'm trying to put a little bit more thought and organization into how I'm actually going to approach it. Um as well as one of the last question that I asked every person that I interviewed was, "What's your main in Super Smash Brothers?" Because Super Smash Brothers is like the DIY game. I feel like,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, I need to find like another like nerdy video game related question that most people will have like an interesting answer to. Because I feel like just asking about the like music things is cool, but like I like to bring it like a step beyond that.
Yeah, I also feel like the same way where you don't want to ask the same just generic music questions the entire time, especially with being in a fest. It's fun atmosphere, so you want to kind of have that like one curveball question.
Yeah.
With like this the Smash, that's a perfect one. For like another like possible nerdy video game one, the only all I can think would be like a Mario Kart thing, but I also am not as well versed in like a lot of nerdy video games or like video games in general as like most people.
Yeah. Or I could
Um,
do like a more generic one. Like I was thinking of like, who could you take anybody at this festival in a one-on-one and definitely win?
yeah,
Something more generic like that, maybe. I don't know.
yeah. I mean that's why like I started adding in for all those Philly episodes, I started adding in the Sheets versus Wawa question just to see how unhinged I could get them before the episode ended.
Yeah. Being from Michigan, I my favorite gas station is Holiday, actually,
Hmm.
which I feel like you don't see around a whole lot, and even like down here, I don't see it nearly as much as I did when I lived up north. But it was like they had the best coffee. That was where I always stopped on road trips and like get a cup of coffee, use the bathroom, that sort of deal.
Okay. Yeah, we have holidays here. I grew up with
Holiday Station store.
yeah, I grew up with Casey's General Store. Uh, if you're if you see a Casey's nearby, you're definitely in the Midwest, and hopefully it's breakfast time because they have the best breakfast pizza. Just saying.
There you go. I was a
Uh,
big fan of the Quick Trip for the little while that I lived
mm,
in Wisconsin too.
oh yeah. I miss. I think they're finally changing their name this year because they got bought out. But more like Iowa to like the mountain area. There's
Western Midwest.
yeah, there's Come and Goes.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think
They're
they're
changing the
changing their name.
name. That's so sad.
Yeah, they got bought out, and I think it's like I think if I read it correctly, they got bought out by like a Christian-based more company. So like they're
Oh.
for sure changing it. Uh, but I think my favorite one that I ever saw, we were in I think Colorado, and there's like loafing jugs.
Logan Jug. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Um, But one other thing you did in 2020, besides starting a podcast, is you finally started putting out your own recorded music.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are an artist. This is Beers with Band, so I had to bring it up
Yep.
and get into all of that. You started out with, and I have it up before anyone comes for me. It's changing screens. It's the Quarantunes
Yeah.
EP. Like, how was it? Obviously, we kind of talked about, and I know a little bit about this, but you were in school doing basically audio. Like, how did it come about to put out your first EP?
It was again very pandemic related, because originally like you kind of have like your senior final project or whatever that kind of like wraps up your whole degree, and we had this it was just called a practicum class, and it was basically just you do something that the structure is more like an internship than a class where you're given this thing that you need to do, and you just have to be smart enough with how you handle your time to be able to get it done.
Hmm.
Um, and so initially, mine was going to be that I was mixing a couple of shows. And so I was going to choose the mics that I needed to have on all the instruments, create a stage plot, do all that kind of stuff, and then actually mix the show when it happened. Um, Shows stopped happening because COVID. And they were basically like, so you can't complete your project now because of this. Uh, Give us anything that you want to do that's mostly related, and we'll probably greenlight it. And it was something where I had been kind of like writing parts of songs and never fully finished anything for a very long time. And I was like, this will be like the perfect fire under my ass that I need to finally like actually write a couple of full complete songs. And so I was like, I'm gonna do an EP. I'm gonna do two originals and a cover. And it was literally just for a class project initially. And then I had my sister who does some graphic design stuff on occasion put together a cover for it. I put it out on Bandcamp in like June of that year. And then when I kind of had like a couple other songs that I was about to that I wanted to release as well, I was like, all right, I'm gonna put it on Spotify and do that whole thing. And that was when I actually like fully released it.
I got to commend you for one overcoming the whole oh shit, like what I was supposed to do for this grade doesn't work anymore,
Yeah.
and like finding something to do. But like I've sang to myself. I've never played an instrument, but to overcome the hurdle of being like okay, no, like one, I did this for class. I could have just presented this for class, shelved it, and like fucking moved on. But to like take it full force and like do what you've done since then, which I'm going to get to in just a second, but like to keep
Yeah.
going, like that's a big hurdle for a lot of people to put out anything, and like I commend you for that.
It was really weird initially because I was like, especially on the first EP, I'm not a huge fan of my vocals. I well, I mean, everybody's got that thing. If you've ever heard your voice recorded as a podcaster, you know this all too well. It's like your voice sounds totally different from how you hear it in your head.
Yep.
Um, and it's something that you have to get over. I've largely gotten over that for the most part, especially with the podcasting. I know what my speaking voice sounds like at this point. But
Um, I was just gonna say to bounce off that, like even with that, like I mean, nothing against that Quarantunes EP, but that being your first thing, comparing that to Changes, which is your latest EP, came out in February of
yeah.
2024, you can definitely see like the confidence build between the two.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
which is which is like a cool thing to see because like everyone's first release they're confident to a certain point, but to see it bridged into Changes, I was like, oh, that's a glow up, super hard.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of those things where I mean everything is better on it, I think. The biggest thing that I stand by with that Quarantunes EP, less so the vocals, because I just don't think that I'm a very good lyricist generally in any aspect. You can dispute that if you want, but um like especially there, I do stand by the song structures and like the riffs and the guitar solos and stuff like that. I was very much ripping off Black Sabbath and Metallica and like that kind of stuff for a lot of that. But I stand by like at least the songs at their core on that project.
Yeah, which I feel like is a solid project. I know, especially when you get to By My Side and you get to like the heavier section. I was not prepared for that, especially like listening to a little bit of Changes and then going back and listening to Quarantunes. I was like, holy shit, like this came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Um, and it really threw me for a loop in like the best way. Just that like I wasn't expecting it from you after seeing everything that I've seen so far.
totally fair.
Um, and then for people that haven't checked out Changes, which is the most recent, please go do so. Like it's a solid EP. Do you feel like it's, I don't know how I want to word this, like it, I mean it's technically your sophomore EP after like these singles that have come out, like And
Yeah.
I feel like it does well as its sophomore EP, as like, hey, this is the next chapter of me. Check it out.
Yeah, no, I like you said, it is very much a glow up. I think it pulls on the same sort of ideas. Like I've always been kind of like a metalhead that likes poppy songs. And so like this is kind of like my way of doing that because it's got kind of like that heavier guitar tone a little bit. The riffs are more like classic. I
Mm-hmm.
talked about that with Christy on Five at the Door too, where a lot of the riffs that I write are a lot more inspired by like classic rock and like classic metal than like a lot of modern stuff. Um, but yeah, I think that a lot of it kind of takes the ideas of that first EP and like yeah, glow up.
And then kind of bouncing off, your point about being a lyricist. In I think it's in Move On. You have this one section, and I know you have like the Instagram reel for it too. Of they said I need to get an education to increase my vocation. It is one of the catchiest little segments, and like it's like you posted that, and I was like, okay, I like that was like the thing that made me be like, okay, I need to go listen to this EP.
Yeah,
I've been slacking on it. I need to go fully listen to it finally. But when you posted that, I was like, okay, it's catchy. It makes sense. Like I just need to go do that.
that's my favorite bit from the entire project actually. It was something I um because a lot of that I started writing actually closer to like 2020, like still pandemic times.
Mm.
And that particular one, I had just like COVID shut down restaurants again. Like I said, I was bartending in it at an Applebee's at the time. And at that point, I was working like 1 day a week doing to go. And it was one of these things where I was just like, I was so down on myself about like, and this is literally what the lyrics are is like I went to school because they said that that would be what would help with my job. I did all these things and it feels like nothing fucking turned out right. And I was walking my dog down the road just like thinking about nothing in particular, and I just like kind of came up with that. I was like educate. Oh, that is a cool rhyme.
Yeah, it works so well. And then the other cool thing that you have on this little EP is you know, the final track changes. It's the title track off the EP, but you have it like a remix version
Yeah.
with Cacophony Kid, um, and it's so cool that you brought them in to kind of tweak this. Like, was it their idea to kind of tweak it, or was it you being like, "Hey, I want you to be a part of this. Will you adjust this and like do your thing with it?"
It was a very casual Twitter interaction. He had tweeted something to the effect of like, "I don't know what the hell people do when they remix songs," or something like that. And I was like, "Do you want to do a remix? I can just send you the stems for changes if you want to like fuck around with it." And he was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." And so he like started like messing around with stuff, like making some different things, and he made something that sounded really cool, and it was like right around the time that the EP was going to come out, and I was like, would you want to just put this on that as like kind of like a bonus track basically? He was like, yeah, that'd be cool. It was very casual, like there was no planning of it or anything. I was just like, oh, you want to learn to remix? This is a song that I have done if you want to just like fuck around with it.
That's a cool way to do it. I've seen like the remix versions kind of happen two different ways, and obviously you could attest to this too. It's usually like a last track on an album, or it'll be like released after the album. Like they'll do B sides and like kind of just tweak a few
Yeah.
different songs. I think like we talked about Turnstile earlier. Like they kind of did like a I think three of their songs got remixed with like this lo-fi version, but it's cool that like that genuinely just kind of built into being the final track on this.
Yeah, it was never a planned thing. It was always just like, yeah, fuck around with it. I don't care if you if it sounds like shit or whatever. Like just fuck around with it, have fun. Like I'm very much not in this for like the money or anything like that, obviously. And so it was just one of those things I was like, I can kind of contribute to the community in a way doing this.
Yeah. Well, and to branch off of that, the other thing that you've been doing for the community uh, is you mixed and mastered Boyd Cavalier's Bitter South EP,
Yep.
which came out recently. Um, which I know we kind of talked about that on your episode, where it was kind of just like they had reached out to you asking some like feedback, and you gave them feedback, and they were like, "Well, would you just want to kind of
Yeah.
do this for us?" Type deal, and like that EP came out so well. Like props to
I'm
you
so happy with
for
it.
it. I know mixing and mastering is like a portion of it, and like also props to Void Cavalier, but like it sounds amazing between like the two of you and the final result.
And I kind of mentioned this on the previous episode too, but it's like they made it so easy for me. Like everything was recorded extremely well, like with so much care. That it was good performances on everything too. So like by the time I got it, I really just had to do like some basic EQ compression, add a little bit of reverb, and it was pretty much done. I mean, I think I did the entire project over the course of like a week and a half,
Oh, nice.
basically. um, but yeah, it was one of those things where they had basically been sending me demos for like a very long time. They were like, I feel like you're like kind of one of my closest friends in like the Twitter sphere. I really value your opinion. And I was like, first off, that means so much to me that anybody gives a shit about my opinion at all. But and it just kind of like I was initially gonna like kind of tell him, give him ideas about like what to do for it, and then they're just like, you just do it.
Now, has that sparked? Obviously, you did mixing mastering in that. You did your own album. Has that sparked you wanting to help other bands if anyone's like in the DIY scene looking for assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of busy all the time doing like the podcasting and doing my own music and all that. But if it's a project that I enjoy, or if the money is right, then I will make time for it. I actually the new Western Jaguar stuff that's coming out. I did the master for his new album as well, kind of based entirely off of the Void Cavalier thing. He was like, I saw that you worked on the Void Cavalier project. It sounded really good. Um, Basically, I could either, I've never done mastering before, I could try and do it myself. I could pay like $30 to get it mastered by AI, or would you be able to like cut me a deal on it or something like that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like another person who I feel very close to in the scene, and I was just like, yeah, I can cut you a deal on it. And that's another project that I mastered that'll be coming out sometime later this year.
Dude, hell yeah. That's amazing, especially like you obviously went to school for a lot of this, but like are finding like the roundabout way back into it from
Yeah.
doing podcasting and like being part of this DIY community that we have.
Well, it's also funny too. I mean, I didn't really mention this before, but like initially, that's what I wanted to do was I wanted to produce, mix, and master, projects and do that sort of thing. And honestly, most of the reason that I started making my own music initially was just to practice, so that by the time I got around to actually working with bands, I had better skill set.
Yeah. Uh, well, it it showed you've been killing it. Um, I know we'll probably start to transition, but I know you kind of hinted at some of these compilations. Uh, what thoughts do you have on that between where because I think I've seen you tweet something about a Butt Rock compilation at some point. Am I wrong?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh, like is that the compilation you're talking about, or are you talking about something completely
No,
different?
that's the one. It was something where I always kind of wanted to do a like, Punk Goes Pop was classic compilations back in the day.
Yep.
I grew up on that shit. And I was like, I kind of want to do my own version of that, but I don't just want to do punk goes pop because I mean that's been done to death.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to come up with a hook for it. I was like, what's a good concept that people are gonna enjoy? And like butt rock just kind of like came back over the last like couple of years. Randomly, people are like, "Oh yeah, so actually reevaluating it, Creed and Nickelback actually fucking rock." So, and,
Yeah,
and so,
you. It's kind of funny when I was talking with my friends about this. Is at what point does Creed stop becoming ironic and just actually become like good? Because
I
like
mean, yeah,
we play it everyone's played it ironically, but now like I play it because like I oh no I want to listen to fucking closer, like I want to listen to higher, I want to listen to all that shit.
yeah.
Uh, so like it really just builds off of that.
And I was just talking to a buddy of mine at work. I was kind of like brainstorming ideas with him. And like we came up with that. And I was like, that's actually an amazing idea. And so that was like back in December. I kind of had the idea and started reaching out to people. And it's getting delayed a little bit just because of, people's schedules and that sort of thing. But by the time this episode is out, the compilation should probably be out. Um, and it's currently going to be 7 songs of people doing that sort of like late 90s to early 2000s butt rock, radio rock, dad rock type of thing. I've talked about it before and I don't know if I'll be able to do it. It kind of depends on how the reception of this is. Like if people enjoy it and fuck with it, then I'll probably do this, but if not, then maybe I won't. But I was like, it'd be kind of funny to do like a new metal comp after that and
Ooh,
have everybody covering like fucking Corn and Limp Bizkit and shit.
that'd be pretty sick.
Yeah. And so that was kind of like the next idea, but I'm doing a song for it. 95 Corolla is doing a song for it. Uh, who else is on there? Cascade Riot.
Sick. Well, I'm stoked to check it out when it fully comes out. Um, it'll be nice too because like you said, everyone does you know punk goes pop. Like the classics are already taken. Like
Yeah.
well, the classics are like the top 40s, but it'll be cool to see kind of like that butt rock version of like what songs you don't normally see covered on this comp.
And I just really like the main reason that I wanted to do it, aside from just like I thought that it would be a fun little project to put together, was I was like, I kind of want to do another like more community building type of thing. And so I was like, I'm gonna reach out to some people and put this whole thing together.
Like I've said, like Fresh Finds is doing crazy things. I love just the video aspect and everything you're doing. Like I'm stoked on this comp. I'm also stoked to see what the next EP or like music that you're working on as just like your solo project is going to be like too. Like do we have any hints as to what that's going to be like?
I've got like 3 songs currently in various stages of writing right now, basically. Um, like I said, I don't think of myself as much of a lyricist. And so lyrics are usually either I get an idea and inspiration, and that's what starts a track, or it's like, okay, I have the entire instrumental written and I have to write lyrics over it. A lot of these are in the collections of riffs stage. Uh, one is kind of like power pop that's also kind of like inspired by screaming females a little bit. I was
Okay.
listening to a lot of them and I came up with this riff and I was like, this kind of sounds screaming females ish. And so I was kind of into that. I've got one that's like kind of an acoustic emo tune from when I was listening to a lot of like Void Cavalier. I kind of came up with this and it was this one I can spoil a little bit because I've already tweeted like half of the lyrics. But it's called Coffee Cups and it's a song about basically being an insomniac because you don't want to go to bed and lose and move on to the next day because you're like,
Hmm.
I need time for me And so you just don't go to bed and stay up super late because you're just like, I'm not ready to lose the rest of my free time. And it was inspired by seeing a bunch of coffee cups sitting on my kitchen sink because I was extremely sleep deprived and I'm just constantly chugging caffeine until the moment that I have to leave the house for the day in the morning. And then
Well,
the other one's kind of like a punky thing.
hell yeah, dude! I'm stoked to check those out when you're fully done with them. Uh, you know, I know we're gonna start to transition here, but like, is there anything I might have missed between you, Ryan, or Fresh Finds that we should know about?
Honestly, that's most of the stuff that I would have wanted covered that I can like specifically think of without like, something else prompting it.
Okay, so there's nothing that you're gonna think about when you go to interview yourself that like, oh, Michael didn't cover this. Like, I need to ask it.
I don't think so.
Okay, well then that just means I did my job. So like, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Um, this is technically beers with bands, or we'll say podcast with bands for this episode. And
The
as
Fresh
I normally
Beers
say,
podcast.
yeah. As I normally say, you don't have to be drinking on these episodes because I'll definitely do that for you. But I know you're sipping some fine bevies on your
I
side. What are you
am.
drinking on? What are you drinking on this fine Saturday?
So for my episode, I started out with the champagne of beers, good old Miller High Life. Mostly just because it's cheap. Uh, and also because it's a light beer, I knew that we were going to be going for like 4 or 5 hours. I was like, I gotta pace myself a little bit.
Yeah.
I can't just start slamming IPAs at 1 in the afternoon, um, but then I also the other day picked up a variety pack from Stone Brewing Company, their IPA variety pack. So far I've had a Tangerine Express Hazy IPA. Currently got the Fear Movie Lions Double IPA, and then on deck I've got the original Stone IPA.
Damn. All right.
I initially I had a bit that I wanted to do for this, and unfortunately I was unable to do it. But I am a fan of the Beers with Bands podcast, and so I listen to it quite a bit. And a few months ago, you had Brady from Thumbs Up on,
Yep.
and they were drinking a double IPA that was like 9.2% or something like that. And you had said that that might be the strongest beer that had been on the podcast. And being myself, like I said, you think about like, what if I were interviewed by this person? And so, like, when I heard that, I internalized it and went, I want to be the one to take them down and and take the crown. And I had just the beer to do it too. It was the Hop Slam IPA from Bell's Brewing Company, but I was unable to find it before we recorded. So I remain probably in second or third place with 8.5%.
Yeah, for sure. Second. But you're also. Are they all 8.5? Let's put it this way.
This is 8.5. This is 6.7. This is 6.9.
I mean, cumulative. I think you win because he didn't crack that IPA. I feel like until like the very towards the end of that episode, and I feel like he had something lighter in the beginning. I could be wrong,
I'll
but
take it.
yeah,
A technical victory.
yeah.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
When we did part one, I was drinking Noka's hard iced teas. Um, they're for people that haven't tried them, they're okay.
They're
Nothing,
okay.
nothing special. They're not as good as I thought they were going to be. Uh, but yeah, they don't get that much of a plug. They were
Sure.
nothing special. And then for this episode, I got a bunch of hams on
Classic.
deck because again, cheap. 30 rack for like $20. It seems like.
Normally, if I go for like, normally if I go for light beer, I'm like a PBR guy.
Same.
But High Life is cheaper, and right now I'm a little low on funds and trying to save up money for other things. So I was like, well, I'm gonna save the like $3 between buying PBR and buying High Life, and I'll get High Life instead.
Yeah. So I'm also normally a big PBR guy. I haven't really gotten into hams this much, except for like probably 8 months ago. But yeah, it was mainly just all PBR. Um, Enough to the point. I don't really have a lot of these anymore, but I got the beers with bands,
You sent
Pabst
me a
Blue logo.
couple. Yeah,
Did I send you? Okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hoped I did.
You
Um,
sent me, I think, a few of all of them because I got that one, and then I got the one that's like the 40, and it says "getting drunk and talking punk" or
oh,
whatever.
that one. Yeah.
That's like the OG, right?
It's not the full OG. Technically the Paps one is the OG, and then
Oh,
this
okay.
one came second. I got everything in front of me, and then there's the 40s by
Yep.
themselves, which I think I sent you some of those, and then this is the most recent one. That's my fucking favorite.
And that
Gross.
logo is only like a year-ish old, right? Because I feel like you had just done like the rebrand right around the time that I found you when you had the Marrier Jake on that episode. I feel like that was right around the time of the rebrand. And yeah, I think that that logo is fucking sick. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah. So this logo for people, and then the banner behind me. I released those at the same time as I started doing the video episodes, as to kind of like do that whole little rebrand. They might have been a little bit later because I don't. I think I might have gotten them late, but it was around that same time. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're not that old, and like they're my fucking favorite. Like I told like my designer, I was like, this is kind of what I want. You know what I do? Just fucking do your thing. And she knocked it out of the park.
Well, I feel like a lot of people don't realize because I don't use it a whole lot, but I have a second logo as well. I've got like the classic, the I've actually got it
The
on a
the
can
metalcore
koozie right
logo.
now. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you got that one.
I've got the classic like Apple wearing headphones thing. And then yeah, I've got like a deathcore, like metalcore inspired like logo that's impossible to read. um and that was another thing, because I had mentioned Salt Lake City and Alpine Loop earlier as being one of the early bands that I interviewed in season one. And they worked with the guy who designed that like deathcore inspired logo
Mm.
before. I followed them on Instagram, and it was like looking for another thing when I was like, oh, maybe I'll make like some t-shirts, some merch, something like that. And I was like, so can you do a logo like that for me? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, all right, fuck yeah. So
Well,
I don't use it a whole lot, but it's a cool thing to have in my back pocket.
it is pretty sick. A lot of the early logos, the Paps one, and then there's like one other logo that I don't think I have stickers for anymore. Which is a bummer because I try to keep a little bit of those. I got all those done through Fiverr.
Oh, okay, right on.
Yeah. Yeah. I just went online. I think the person that actually did them lives in India, but I paid like $10 and I got like a decent amount of designs throughout it all. But because that was the thing too, and like I'm sure you came across this where you're starting this out, you need logos, but you're like, I don't know if anyone's gonna give a shit about this,
Yeah.
and I don't want to spend a fuck ton of money on logos. So what's the cheapest way I can do this?
Well, like I said, the original, the Apple with headphones logo, that one was designed by my sister. She went to like 2 semesters of graphic design school. And I was like, hey, Aaron, can you do this for me? She's like, yeah, sure, why not? And so I think I ended up like Venmoing her like $50 after the fact. Like, thanks for putting up with my bullshit type of deal. Um, and then yeah, that one was somebody that I met kind of like through a couple of other people. My intro, like my little like intro stinger thing,
Hmm.
the animation for that I got done on Fiverr, but I wrote the music for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that animation is so fucking sick. I was like, damn, this is professional as fuck, man.
Yeah, no, it was super cool. I was looking through like a whole bunch of stuff. I was like, "Ooh, this guy's animation style is neat." And again, it was only like $50 or something like that. So I'm like, "Well, what the hell? Why not?"
Yeah. So my original intro, well, I guess when the original intro, there wasn't really to it anything to it. I think I just made it on GarageBand with just using the shit that's like pre-made in there. But then
Mhm.
like the second
Like
wave
the
of
Apple
intro,
loops or whatever.
yeah, the second intro was made by Paul Kettler from he used to be in the band called Tightwire from Minneapolis. They were originally Drones. Tightwire's been on a couple times, but he was my roommate for a period, and he was, laid off basically from COVID. And he was like, "Do you need like an intro done? I'm just bored at home." And I'm like, "Yeah, if you want to throw something together, like just shoot it my way." And he made it, and it's sick. It's still used at the very end of the episodes on the video version. And then the new intro is made by my bestest, goodest pal, Thomas Allen. He's in a band called Last Autumn out in San Diego. And when I was doing that whole rebrand going to video, doing the new logos, I was like, okay, I need to switch up this too. So I knew he's a day one homie. And I was like, hey, man,
Nice.
would you want to throw something together? So he just asked me for my voice for that. Other than that, all the instrumentals are all him in those
This is
intros.
the Beers with Bands podcast with your host, Michael Torres.
It's funny because when I build the episodes and like do everything, like I listen back to at least the intro part to make sure it flows right, and then
Yeah.
I'll just speak it along too with like the recording and just make fun of myself at the same time.
Thinking about that, because that's kind of like your like intro or whatever. And in my intro, I always mention like kind of the tagline of like the show about discovering new music with good people. And I don't remember when I came up with that. I think I said it one time, just like spur of the moment, recording an episode, and I was like, "That's good. I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
that. I like it."
it's so solid because like I remember one time I came up with the tagline and I don't remember where I put it on what social. And then I went to like the next social and I couldn't remember it, so I came up with a different one. So there was a point where if you were to look at, I think Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and maybe even Anchor, they all at one point I think had different bios because I couldn't remember the tagline from each one.
Well, and I think that I have that in my bio on everything, and then I've got kind of like my banner that I use, like the little header thing, which has the like deathcore inspired logo, and it says "Discovering new music with good people."
Yeah. Uh, but that was the beer segment leading into all of that with logos, which is didn't have that planned, but that's how that works. That's totally fine with me.
Well, it's
Uh,
another thing too. Like when I go to like buy beer, a lot of the time I'll like look at the can and be like, "All right, that's a cool looking can. It's got a skeleton doing a kickflip on it. That's the
right?
beer I'm gonna go with." Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but dude, as we start to wind down here, I know we've been talking for. I mean, on this episode is Times Construct, so it's only been like an hour or so. But like throughout this day, we've been talking for quite a while. And I'm just trying to think of like a good way to end off our time talking about everything so far. And technically, you know, you are a podcast, you are a band, you're on Beers with Bands. We normally talk about some fun stories from your time on the road. Obviously, you've gone down to Jorts Fest,
Yep.
but you've also been to a handful of stuff in Michigan, and Michigan also is. I've said it on podcasts before. This like Michigan's popping the fuck off with all these things.
Hotbed. Yeah.
Uh, Kind of tell me about like some of your favorite shows that you've gone to in the Michigan scene, I guess.
So one of the ones I was preparing for this, thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, so this isn't really like any bands that anybody would know or anything, but it is kind of like a funny story the way that it happened, which is the first band that I ever produced for like a little bit of pocket change was my friends in the band Tarnished. I graduated with or no, the one guy who's like kind of the main dude from that band was like a couple years older than me. We went to the same high school together, and I produced a song for them. And then like a few months later, they were gonna play a show at the local casino, and they were like, "Hey, usually we just like run our own audio, but it would probably sound way better if we had like an actual audio guy doing it." And I was like, okay, cool, bet. When is it? They're like, tonight. I'm like, but I was like really interested in trying to do it. This was again when I was working at Applebee's, and I was like, I was already scheduled for a double shift, and I opened the bar at 9 a.m. and I was scheduled to close the bar at the end of the night. I was able to talk to somebody and get them to kind of switch shifts with me, so that would be the first one that would like get to leave after the dinner rush ended,
Mm.
um, so that I could make it out to the gig. And so I ended up doing that. I ran home, grabbed some clothes, changed, met them at the casino. And I think like that's probably the most punk rock I've ever been, which is like spontaneously day of like, yeah, I'll run audio for your band after working a double shift. So I think I worked from 9 a.m. until like 7 p.m. Then I ran audio until like 1 a.m. And then I stuck around with the band drinking until like 2:30 and didn't get home until like 3 in the morning or something
Oh,
like that. It was terrible the next morning, but like I was really like, this is the punk rock lifestyle, baby.
dude, I remember my friends for a time they lived in. So I lived in a town called West Liberty. They lived in Davenport, which is probably like 45 minutes to an hour away, and they would have a show on like a fucking middle of the week or even on the weekends or whatever. Like they would have a show, and I would be like, those are my dudes. Like I
Yeah,
was their TM. I went to high school with them. Like anything they were doing, you could guarantee I was going to be there at
ride
their
or
full.
die.
Yeah. So like they had a show. I was like, all right, cool, bet I'll be there. So I went out to the show. We got done. Had the little after party at one of their trailers or whatever. And then it's like, should probably figure out how to like
Get
get
home.
home. It's already like late as shit. And then like just doing that like drive to get home, being dark, middle of the night, no cars, and you have that tiredness. But like just like getting home and just being like, I could have just fucking stayed there because like as punk rock is like I didn't have to work in the morning. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
like it would have been smarter to stay there rather
I
than
could have
like
just slept in my car. Yeah,
could have done that. Could have
could have
instead of
gotten
just
a
being
hotel.
hung over in my own bed. Like I still made it home. I'm just gonna cut all that because that went that went sideways fast.
We are not advocating for drinking and driving.
Yeah, that was the wrong thing to push. Good thing I didn't crack that. But no, I mean I think my main point was just like that punk rock feeling of like you go to the shows. Oh no, okay, never mind. I got it. I know how I'm gonna tie this back in.
All right, all
Uh,
right.
all right, all right. No, I remember. So like, my friends were in a band. They like I wrote or died for them. Like, those are my dudes. I remember one time I was working at this factory, and it was one of those things where like you show up before your shift to make sure you get on the line in the factory. If you don't get on the line, you can kind of wait around for a little bit, and then maybe get put on a different line, or like you're kind of like shit out of luck, and you don't have a line for that night, which is looking back, it's fucking ridiculous.
That's rough, man.
Yeah. But there was one time where like my friends were playing a show, and I was supposed to work that night, and I got there, and I was like, kind of just sat in the back and kind of hid from everyone, so that way no one like the line leader couldn't pick me to be on their line, and I was like, by the end of it, I was like, whoop. I didn't get picked for a line. I guess I'm gonna go to this show now. And went to the show instead. And I just remember my parents being like, "Why the fuck did you work?" And I'm like, "Oh, they didn't pick me for the line." And they're like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, "Uh,
uh,
to the show." And they're like, "You fucking idiot." And I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you."
that's funny. No, but I mean, as far as other shows and stuff like that too, I think one of the cool things over the last year has been meeting more and more people that I've met online in person. Um, Prime Birds, great guy that I met through doing the podcast, puts out some amazing stuff. He is from Toronto, which is actually not terribly far from Detroit,
Yeah.
and happened to be in Windsor, which is just across the border in Canada, and came into the States to watch a hockey game. And we met up at a bar afterwards and like shot the shit, had a couple beers, did that whole thing. So that was cool. Um, Kim, who you may or may not know, was
Reply
kind
Guy
of like,
Records.
yeah, Reply Guy Records was one of the first people that I ever like kind of became friends with. We met at about a year ago at this festival called Taco Fest out in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And that was the first time I also met Cascade Riot, because they were playing. That was the main reason that both of us were going, was to catch the Cascade Riot set. Um, I also went with her and Nick Cacophony Kid, also Reply Guy Records, to the Wax Bodega show a few months ago. So that was really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw the tweets of the three of you like leading up to that, and I was
yeah,
very jealous. One, that you're able to meet up with all these people, because like I feel like out of unless I unless I'm completely wrong with everyone that I'm meeting on the DIY Twitter, seeing on DIY Twitter, there's not that many I feel like from like the Minneapolis scene that are part of it, but
mm-hmm.
also getting to see the Wax Bodega tour in person because uh, you know, I think I mentioned this on or I tweeted about this. Three of the four bands have been on the podcast,
Yeah.
but I've never seen, and I've also never seen Arms Length in person yet,
Oh,
because
okay.
they've never hit Minneapolis. So I'm very jealous that you were got to see them.
Yeah, no, it was a great tour. I haven't actually met them, but I've seen Saturdays like two or three times at this point. Because I saw them at Excellency last year. Um, I saw them at the Wax Bodega tour. Might have seen them one other time. I don't recall. Um, those were all really fun shows. Excellency was just a blast last year.
Yeah.
Even though it was hot as hell because they didn't have any AC and it was like
Oof.
90 degrees and everybody's just sweaty and moshing, and it was very hot. It was really funny though. I'll send you the picture after this so that you can like put it in the edit if you want to. But Fremont Pike, who are another like Detroit band, played Excellency last year. And there was a photographer who was posting pictures of everybody's sets. And they just posted a picture of the audience like during a mosh pit segment of their set. And I was like front and center of the photo. It was really weird just like scrolling through Instagram and I'm like, that's me. What the fuck? It
Dude,
was
remember
really
the
funny.
days you'd go to like a big show and you just knew that cameras were going and you were just looking for yourselves in like
Yeah.
the front.
Or like you go to like a hockey game or something like that. They got like the fan cams and shit. And
Yeah.
you're just like, am I gonna be up on the jumbotron?
Well, I think you would get like basically enshrined for the rest of your life when you were part of the live photo that made it on the back of like a pop punk or like punk shirt. Like, because there's the Swords
Yeah,
Apart shirts that had like the crowd shots. If you made it in that photo, you're like solidified for life.
this is my legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also been interesting, like as I've interviewed more like local Detroit bands and artists and stuff like that, just like going to shows and like occasionally being recognized as like, you're the guy who does that podcast, right? You're the podcast guy. Or like there's been a couple times that I've just like talked to people and it's like come up in the conversation and they're like, I thought you looked familiar. Just like little things like it's really funny becoming like a niche like D-list, internet micro celebrity.
I was at a show a couple weeks ago, and like I was just leaning against the bar because again I was there by myself. I was there to see Puppy Angst, who were in town,
Oh,
um,
nice.
and I was just kind of just hiding away, just drinking a beer, watching the basketball game, and someone comes up and they're like, "Hey, are you the Beers with Bands guy?" And I'm like, "Oh fuck,
Oh shit.
maybe who what?" And
Who
then
wants
it
to
turned
know?
it turned out to be there's another podcast here in Minneapolis called Ear Coffee. The two members of Ear Coffee are part of a band called National Park Service, who have been on the podcast.
Yeah.
And it was them, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you guys are." And then I had to like try and remember what band they were from and everything. But it was just one of those weird things where like normally even when I wear like when I go to shows, I'll wear like the Beers with Bands like merch shirt that I have.
Sure.
And normally no one gives a shit. Like they
It's
don't know
like a
who the
name
fuck I am.
tag, basically. You're like,
Yeah.
this is me. Yeah.
And so like I was wearing that, and like on the back of the shirt is the giant like new logo, and so it was just for someone to be like putting it together of like that's the shirt, that's the logo, that's the guy.
That's the guy. Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, what do I do?
Yeah, no, it was really funny. I had just like in December, I had just put out an episode with a friend of mine who's like an electronic music producer. She goes by the name One with a period after it.
Mm.
Um, and somebody that she knew happened to be at the same show that I was, like an hour away, like an hour out of town. And like I was just like walking out of the bathroom back into the bar, and they're like, "Wait, you're?" And I was just like, "Yeah." It's just like really funny, like randomly being recognized because I'm just not used to that at all. I think
Right,
of
it's
myself as
it's
just some dude.
yeah, 100%. Like it's cool to see like the people that you do know that are like that know who you are when you get to a show, but like to have other people like say something that you aren't expecting them to say anything, like it's so cool. And like I'm like shit, like am I like on am I an influencer right now? Like is this how it feels to be like an influencer?
Start walking
uh,
with a little extra swagger for the rest of the
yeah,
night. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what, I'll take a double shot of that, by the way. uh
Because
but
I am the shit.
I'm Beers with Bands, and they're like, that'll be
Do you
450,
know who
sir.
I am? Yeah.
Dude, on the other aspect though, like it's so awkward to like talk to someone and be like, because I like so Liquid Mike was in town when they because it was I got lucky enough where I got to see Liquid Mike, Saturdays at Your Place, and Charmer in one night.
Ooh,
They
boy,
were
that's a
like
stacked lineup.
they were all touring together. They did like three shows, and they came through. So I said, "What's up to the Saturdays dudes?" And then I went to go talk to Mike, the Mike from Liquid Mike
The Mike.
after the
Yep.
show, and I was like, "Hey man, typical like, hey man, that was a good set." And then I was like, "If you ever wanted to, like, I run a podcast," and they're like, "Okay," and then dealing with that, but then even like going up to like the Saturdays dudes, because I can't remember their name of their merch guy, but he's also like their manager, and I had been talking with him through email leading up to that, like our episode, and
Yeah.
I was like, hey, are you so and so? And he's like, yeah, and I only knew that not because I was freaky good memory. It's like I looked back through my phone to look at my emails, and I went up to him and I was like, hey, I'm Michael from Beers with Bands, and he was like, what? So like I had to like lift up my jacket, and I was like looking at the logo. I was like,
This
Beers with
thing. Yeah.
Bands. I'm this guy, and he's like, oh, okay. And
Okay.
I was like, oh, fucking shoot me right now. Like I feel so stupid. And I was like, I did the podcast with the guy, and he's like, oh yeah, yeah. And then like he was nice about it, but in my mind, it was a lot worse, uh, emotionally.
I've had
But
that go both ways. One time I've never even interacted with them before, but like a couple months ago I went and saw Cascade Riot and Fremont Pike out in Pontiac, which is about half an hour outside of Detroit. And they were playing a show with goalkeeper who are
hmm,
from Philly,
yep.
and I was like super into their set, so I like walked up to the merch table and like just wanted to buy a shirt or whatever, and they were like, man, the energy that you bring to the show is like really, really sick. This is awesome. And I was like, okay, by the way, I run a podcast, and they were like, yeah, we've actually got a new project that's going to be coming out soon. Like, we'll definitely hit you up and like give me a follow and like the whole thing. And it wasn't even intended to be like that. And then there's other times where I'm like, this is somebody that I've interacted with a ton of times on Twitter, but they haven't said anything to me, and I haven't said anything to them yet. And I just feel really awkward. And so I've just never talked to them. And I'm like, I could have just gone up and said, "Oh, hey, it's Ryan. I do the Fresh Finds podcast," and they might have known, or they might have gone, "Okay." And like either way, probably would have been better than me just not talking to them at all. But I just didn't.
Dude, I feel that hard because there was a show recently, and these people I have had on my podcast in person, like they're from the Twin Cities and like even from Iowa City, like area where I'm from. But I'll see them at a show, and I was still like staying off to the side because I feel like I'm not in their peripherals or like on their level that they give a shit at all. And then like randomly, like I might go to the bar and like they'll be there and they'll be like, every time like I fuck myself over because like, every time they're always like, oh my god, Michael, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, oh shit, like I probably could have just stepped in your eye line like half an hour sooner. Uh,
Yeah,
like it wouldn't have had this like I wouldn't have had this mentality of like it's just that guy that like does that thing, and like they actually give a shit.
yeah. I also always carry around like my stickers. I just keep a few in my wallet so I can like give them to people like if they happen to recognize me, or like if I happen to see a band, I can be like, "Oh, by the way," and then give them something.
Yeah.
And there was like a few months where I didn't have any anymore, and I hadn't like re-upped my stock. And I went and saw oh, who was it? Um Completely blanking. It's the six beers that are doing it to me.
It happens,
Uh,
man.
uh Teenage Halloween. I
Mm.
saw Teenage Halloween when they came through on their tour, and I bought merch and like talked to them, and I was like, oh yeah, like I've loved the record. I do this podcast. I even featured one of your songs from like your first album on an episode forever ago, and they were like, oh, that's super cool. And then I was like, I don't have any stickers that I can give this person, and I felt terrible because I was like, I want to kind of like make this exchange, and I couldn't.
Yeah, because I mean, for us, the stickers are our business card,
Exactly. That's always the
and
way that I've thought about it. Is it's like it's a business card that people will like actually kind of use instead of like throw away immediately.
yeah, uh, yeah. Hopefully, they like you give it to someone, and whether they reach you right away or not, hopefully they put it on something because they think it looks cool at least, and then they look at it later and they're like, "Huh, fresh finds. I should hit them up."
Put it on a pedal case, put on a guitar case. I also just always keep them up, and just like if I go to a venue that I haven't been before, just slap one up like in the bathroom or something like that too.
Oh yeah, I do that too. Funny enough, when Puppy Yanks was here, I had been talking with Alyssa, their lead singer, of like, hey, when you guys are in town, I'll be at the show because they basically messaged me and were like, hey, we're coming to Minneapolis on this tour, and I was like, bet I'll fucking be there.
Oh,
Um,
that's rad that they reached out to you directly. That's awesome.
yeah, I was so stoked, but like I didn't reach out to like anyone else, and then their drummer Eric is in another band called In Lieu of Roses, and I've had them on, and I didn't hit him up beforehand, but they got to the venue, and thankfully I have been to that venue a few different times. So like the bathroom has a fuck ton. I mean uh, four beers with band stickers. Depending on where you look, they're on the mirror, they're on the towel thing, everything. But like
Yep.
he messaged me when he got to the venue. He's like, "Oh, dude, we're in Minneapolis." And when I got to the show, I was like, "Oh yeah, like Alyssa had already told me or whatever." He's like, "Oh yeah, like I was in the bathroom, I saw all your stickers." And I thought I remembered that you lived in Minneapolis. So I hit you up. I was like, "Fucking do it's those stickers are doing the Lord's
It's
work."
working, baby.
Yeah.
It is
Um,
really funny. I just always like take them everywhere with me, just in case somebody happens to know who I am or gives a shit. I can be like, here.
yeah. Well, I used to tweet for the shows that I would go out for. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to this show. If you find me, I have stickers in my pocket. I will just give you beers with band stickers, but you have to find me at these shows. No one looks at my fucking Twitter, so like, no one would ever find me at a show in Minneapolis. So I would just go home with stickers that I didn't put up in the bathroom.
I don't do that for regular shows, but like a couple of festivals that I've gone to, I've done that just to be like, oh, there's going to be a lot of people who are in my like potential audience base.
Yeah,
Like when I went out to Excellency, or like I'm going to be going to Coachella in a couple weeks, and so I'm going to do it for all that, and just like, like if you're interested, I got stickers, grab some,
uh, hell yeah, dude. I'm also now jealous that you're going to Coachella. I'm not making to Coachella this year. Hopefully, maybe next year. I'll fucking figure it out.
I'm
Um,
so stoked on it. It's really funny because I just like kind of like procrastinated forever as far as like finding a hotel or whatever. And then I'm
mm,
like, it's only like an hour away. I'll just make 2 day trips, I guess.
oof. Hey, as long as it works. I think I'm like at least 12 or 16 hours to Coachella. But
Yeah, that's a ways.
yeah, hopefully next year I'll be there for Coachella 8. And then we'll have a bunch of beers in person and just have a good fucking time.
Oh hell yeah. The biggest thing that I was excited for was I was like, Full Blown Meltdown and The Merrier both don't play live like
Yeah,
ever. So I'm like, I gotta make it out to those just to see them rip a live set.
yeah, it'll. I'm so stoked that they're able to do it, especially like, Jake was supposed to do it. Not last year. It was either last year or the year before they were supposed to do Coachella and things didn't work out.
And then
But I'm
like their
stoked.
band got sick, or he got sick or
Yeah,
something, and they had to drop out. Yeah, I vaguely remembered that.
yeah. So it'll be a good time. Make sure you do a lot of finger pointing for me.
Yes.
Hell yeah. Well,
I'll
dude,
bring
like,
some beers with band stickers and
dude, I will
represent.
literally mail you more on Monday if you do
Hell yeah.
that.
Bet.
But all right, fucking game on. I just re-upped too, so
There you go.
uh but dude, Ryan, this has been a fun time, talking, getting to be on your side for part 1, having you be on this side for part 2. I've had a great time today just drinking beers and just shooting the shit. Like it's been a wonderful time.
Fantastic double header of an episode. I'm probably gonna finish this beer and then take a nap.
Dude, I feel you there. Like I need to do that. I also want to go to Menards because I need to homeowner shit.
You gonna
But
save big money?
I'm gonna try to. Actually I need to get a new mailbox because I just got new siding done. So I'm changing the color of my mailbox, and
Uh,
it's like $4 cheaper at Menards than it is at Home Depot. So fuck you, Home Depot.
I joked a
Uh,
while ago because I like randomly got him in like a white elephant gift or something like that. But I was like, the most Midwest thing about me is that I have like 5 Menards coffee mugs.
uh, I used to work at Menards. Um, And one of the things I actually miss about Menards is for your birthday, well, actually, not just for your birthday, but for every holiday, you would get a gift. So I have like a full Menards oven mitt, like rubber oven mitt that's good up to like 450
Ooh,
degrees. I have this Menards bottle opener that is also a 7/16 fucking wrench.
hell yeah.
Uh, and then I have a bunch of coasters, which are over on that table, which I can't reach right now from where I'm sitting. But
Nice.
I fucking miss getting all those gifts. I also have like my lunchbox is like I only take a sandwich to work, but it's a double sized lunchbox. It says Menards on it because I got it for fucking free.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
so
Midwest,
it'll
baby.
yeah, fucking killing it. But dude, Ryan, before we take off, before you have that sip, or you can have that sip first. Um, is there anything that the people should know? Well, actually, as I normally say, we've had a good time. But if anyone's looking for fresh finds, either the podcast, socials, merch, where can they find it?
So I've got it linked at the bottom of all of my podcast episodes where you can find I do have merch. It's like print on demand Redbubble stuff because I never really like thought I don't know. I didn't feel confident enough buying like 100 shirts and that I could sell all of them. So I was like, print on demand. That'll be great. But you can find all of that stuff. I've also got an affiliate link for eargasm earplugs. If you want to protect your hearing, which you absolutely should, you can get 10% off of those high fidelity earplugs. And I get like a little kickback of a couple bucks if you do that. All the socials are Fresh Finds Pod. And YouTube, if you just search up Fresh Finds Podcast or on any of your favorite podcasting services, it should pop up.
Well, like I normally say, whether you find this episode on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I guess X, Threads, or you watch the YouTube version, you get to see Ryan's lovely face like I did today. Check the hyperlinks down below. Go follow Ryan Fresh Finds on all the platforms. Be ready for new episodes, new music. Go get that merch because it helps out. Us as podcasters. Like I don't want to go into semantics, but I don't make anything from this. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So any little bit helps. I think you also have a link out there to buy you a coffee.
Buy me a coffee. I have never had anybody actually donate to that, so that would be a first. That would be really cool.
Yeah, go do that. Help us out, and then obviously Jorts Fest will have already passed, and so we'll have Focello, but you all would have seen Ryan there. Be ready for Ryan to take the storm probably at Jorts Fest again next year, and then hopefully see
Excellency in August.
Excellency in August, and just go get those stickers from him if you see him. But Ryan, my podcasting brother, my podcasting
brothers in arms.
It's been a great time. I'm really stoked that we got to do this, and I really appreciate you taking the time and being down for it.
I couldn't think of a better way to spend an afternoon.
Great answer. Well, everyone go listen to Fresh Finds, and I'll catch everyone on the next episode.
All right.
See ya.
Beers with bears.